Hi everybody, welcome to Activity 6 of Creative Reuse for Preschoolers ages 3 to 5. This activity I've called Tube Time, and it's sort of based on a series of sculptures that I did way back when, and you can probably see them over my shoulder. They're all made from plastic straws. It was sort of as a comment on the use of plastic straws and the effects on the environment. So I decided to make all these straw sculptures. So they're really kind of abstract shapes, three-dimensional shapes using tubing and some kind of wire or thread inside the tubes to create the shape. But it can be sort of pared back and made quite simple for quite young children. And I've done this on a few different scales for young kids. I'm going to start just by showing you how to use straws, but you might be able to then translate it to something bigger for the preschool or the centre that you're working in. A lot of you probably have straws sitting around, I'd imagine. I mean, we don't use them much anymore, or hopefully we don't use them very much anymore, particularly plastic straws. I just happen to have quite a lot left over from some of my art pieces that I made. Any sort of straw will do, except wax straws don't really work because they bend too easily. So I've just got a couple of straws here, or 4 straws, and what I'm going to do, you don't necessarily need to do this. If your kids are good with scissors, they can cut them up, doesn't matter what sort of lengths, but probably a straw like this you just cut into 3 lengths. If you cut them without holding them like this, that little end bit's going to fly off over there. So just keep that in mind if you're working with kids. That, I mean, that's probably a bit dangerous for them to cut like that, but just keep in mind that you're going to have straws flying away everywhere if you use straws and they cut them. Otherwise, you can pre-prepare them into little pieces about that big. And what we're going to do is join them together. I'll just cut those ones up. I'll just show you just some other tubes that you could possibly use. Here's a piece of irrigation pipe that I salvaged from somewhere. It's just that black irrigation pipe. That can be cut fairly easily with big scissors. And again, if you wanted to make a big sculpture, you could cut them into pieces about that big. Cut them up. And this particular technique starts by making a triangle out of the tubes. So with these ones, you start by doing this. And they sort of form themselves in a way once you get going. So once you've got your tubes, whatever they are, you could even use some of this polypipe if you're interested, but you'd need to cut it probably with a saw, which means you need to do a bit of prep. So let's just start with these. The other thing you're going to use is some kind of material to thread through the straws or the piping. Here's a piece of elastic. You could probably try that. This is a piece of old cable that I've salvaged from small Christmas lights, and it's quite soft and it's not going to hurt anybody if they use that. There's also wire if you feel like you can monitor wire use. I mean, one of the problems with working with little kids and wire is that, you know, there's potential for them to scratch themselves or poke themselves with it. So unless you're planning on being around a lot and helping, wire is actually really good. The other thing that you can use are the good old reliable pipe cleaners, but they're not reused, like they're brand new materials, which I try and avoid. So we're going to just start with the straws, and I might just use the pipe cleaners. Oh, another thing that you could possibly use is some fabric and one of these nice big child-friendly needles. So there's a lot of threading involved with this activity, and it's kind of fun. So if you're using something like wire, which is naturally stiff, I'm going to just use wire. It just goes through really nicely. So push that through the straw and bend that back so it doesn't come off. And then start with 3. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. I'm going to use a green one. So lots of colour identification doing this activity, length, you know, what are straws for, why would we use them? And then what I'm going to do is turn that into a triangle and twist that like that. And if you use a small wire, thin wire like this, which is really quite thin but stiff enough to hold them in shape, you can build shapes up really easily, and you don't need that much. So I'm going to put another red one on here, but I'm going to make this, start to turn that into a triangular prism. So now I'm going to add another green one to that. Now that one can join up with that one. Just find a spot, like a little angle that it reaches, and then twist it round. And you don't have to do a big heavy knot or anything. And now you can also play around with that. You can close it up, make it smaller. You can turn it into, a mouth, or look at two triangles together. Then we can join it again over here by getting another piece of wire. So you don't need big long pieces. You can fold that over. It's soft enough that little fingers can actually do this, but if you're more comfortable for the kids to be using something like pipe cleaners, then do that by all means. I'm going to bend that. Now that's not going to join to anything, so I need to add another piece of straw. And then I've got another triangle. It's all kind of based on triangles and squares. And even the most rudimentary three-dimensional shape will be really fun for them to make. They'll actually really enjoy it. Another thing is if you don't have these pre-made needles, or you don't want to buy them or whatever, you can always just use something like a skewer. Cut the pointy end off. You don't really need a pointy end if you're going into something like a straw. But if the lengths of straw are longer than this, it'd be good to be able to push the wire or the thread or whatever it is you're using through. So this is just some elastic that I found in great quantities. So if you want to use elastic, you can just get some sticky tape and make a sort of a needle shape, a needle thing out of that. Wind that around the stick. And then that can just be poked through whatever it is you want to poke it through. So like here. And watch it come out the other end, pull it through, and then add another one. Even just flat shapes are fine with this. They could each make a flat shape and then you could join them all together. So it's just threading, but on a grander scale. And instead of making pasta necklaces, we're making sculpture. I'll tie a little knot in that. And then with these leftover bits, I can add some more. You probably could do it with pasta. That'd be cool. The other thing is, depending on the tube you're using, you don't want to use tubes that are different diameters, because when you join them together, the smaller tube can fall down the hole of the bigger tube, and that's not much fun when that happens, because it gets lost and all your good work will come to nothing. I don't have enough elastic on that one. But you get the picture. It's just another version of the smaller shapes. I've made some of these that are as big as this. They're great, and you can throw them around the playground, and if they've got big sort of gaps in them, kids can even sort of climb through them. They're kind of like monkey bars for midgets. So enjoy that, and I hope it works for you. But think laterally and use different materials. I'm sure there are lots more options that you could use for creating this little sculpture. Thanks for watching.